I didn't think this would matter, but it does. Look, right now, millions of people are walking into big box stores staring at a $1,000 price tag on a premium 65-inch TV and thinking they're getting a steal for the tournament. And I get it, 2 years ago, that was the math. But I was looking at the actual inventory data this morning. Actually, wait, let me just say it straight. You are about to get completely played, because right now, the entire industry is quietly dumping massive 85-inch mini LED monsters for practically the exact same price as last year's mid-range 65-inch models. But they aren't advertising the good ones. They want you to buy the leftover 60 Hz edge-lit garbage that makes basketballs look like blurry comets. Hi, this is Chris Walker. If you appreciate me digging through the actual panel specs and firmware logs to save you from massive buyer's remorse, hit subscribe. It's how we keep this channel independent, ad-free, and safe from brand sponsorships. Because today, we need to talk about why buying a 65-inch TV right now is a mathematical mistake, which 85-inch panels are the actual hidden gems, and which ones will look like a washed-out gray mess the second you turn off your living room lights. Here is the reality of the television market right now. The math has completely flipped on us. For the last 5 years, hitting that 85-inch mark meant paying a massive early adopter tax. You were basically paying for the sheer logistical nightmare of shipping a piece of glass the size of a ping pong table. But panel manufacturing yields in those massive sizes have quietly caught up. The factories in Asia are pumping out 85-inch mother glass at a rate that is literally clogging up warehouses. So right now, just before the spring models roll in, retailers are trapped. They have massive physical boxes taking up precious square footage, and they need them gone before the 2026 models arrive. That's why you are seeing 85-inch panels drop into that $1,000 to $1,400 sweet spot.
And this is a massive, wallet-draining but. The big brands know you just want a giant screen. They know the psychology. You walk into a store, you see an 85-inch Samsung or LG for under $1,000, and your brain just shuts off. You think it's 4K, it's huge, I'm buying it. Please do not do this. If you buy a base model 85-inch TV, like a Samsung Crystal UHD or an entry-level LG UR series, you are buying an edge-lit panel. Think about the physics for a second. The manufacturer is trying to shoot light from a tiny strip of LEDs at the very bottom edge of the frame, all the way up across 4 feet of vertical glass. It doesn't work. It's a physical impossibility to do that cleanly. What you get in your living room when you turn off the lights to watch a movie is this disgusting, cloudy gray mess covering the screen. It looks like a flashlight is bleeding into the letterbox bars. It completely ruins the contrast. At 55 inches, edge lit is annoying. At 85 inches, it is a catastrophic, unwatchable disaster. And that's before we even talk about motion. I see this constantly in the comments. People buy these giant budget TVs for sports. They turn on a basketball game and the ball looks like a comet trailing across the screen. They think their cable box is broken. It's not. It's because those cheap 85-inch TVs use 60 Hz panels. When you stretch a 60 Hz refresh rate across 85 inches, every single limitation is magnified. You literally see the frame stutter. So what's the actual play here? If we are ignoring the $900 garbage tier, where does the math actually start working in your favor? Let's look at the Hisense U7 series. Actually, specifically the U7 QG variant that's flooding the US market right now for around $12.97. I've been incredibly critical of Hisense's quality control in the past, but I have to admit what they are doing to the mid-range market right now is just ruthless. They are essentially taking flagship-level mini LED technology and pricing it like a budget TV. Here is why mini LED is non-negotiable at 85 inches. Instead of a few bulbs on the edge, the entire back of this TV is lined with thousands of microscopic LEDs grouped into hundreds of individual dimming zones. If a scene is dark in the top left corner, the TV physically shuts off the backlight in that exact spot. The blacks are actually pitch black. When you're watching a movie with subtitles, you don't get that glowing halo effect around the text. It's just clean, sharp contrast.
And more importantly for right now, it's a 144 Hz panel. Not motion rate 240, not some software interpolation trick that makes everything look like a cheap soap opera. True hardware level 144 Hz. When the camera pans fast across a hockey rink, the ice stays sharp. But I'm not going to sit here and read you a spec sheet like a walking billboard. Let's talk about what ownership of this massive thing actually feels like after 6 months, because this is where the spec sheets lie to you. Hisense packs this TV with Google TV, which looks great on day one. But here's the reality. The processor they use to run the actual operating system is just fine. It's adequate, but give it 8 months, load it up with Max, Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, let the cache fill up, and it starts to drag. You'll hit the home button, and there's that half-second delay that just drives you insane. My advice: if you buy the U7, do not connect it to your Wi-Fi directly. Keep it dumb. Spend $50 on an Apple TV 4K or a high-end Roku stick, plug it into one of the HDMI ports, and never look at the built-in Hisense interface again. The panel itself is a Ferrari. Don't let their cheap internal computer throttle your experience. And there is one more thing you need to know about buying this specific TV at 85 inches. It's the dirty little secret of the entire panel industry, and the brands absolutely hate when we talk about it. It's called the panel lottery. Because producing an 85-inch sheet of glass is so difficult, there are tiny variations in how uniform the layers are. Sometimes you get a TV with the dirty screen effect. It looks like faint vertical smudges or gray bands running down the screen. You won't notice it during a movie, but the second you watch a football game and the camera pans horizontally across that solid green field, you see these faint jail bars overlaid on the grass. Hisense and TCL both struggle with this at the 85-inch size. It's a roll of the dice. If you buy this TV, the very first thing you do is go to YouTube, search for a dirty screen effect test video, and run it. If you see heavy banding, box it right back up and exchange it. Do not let them tell you it's normal.
Speaking of testing, drop a comment down below right now. What size TV are you actually trying to replace? I'm planning next month's lab testing, and honestly, with prices dropping this fast, I want to know if you guys even care about me reviewing 65-inch models anymore, or if we should just shift entirely to 75 and 85 inches. Let me know in the comments. Because if the Hisense feels like a bit of a gamble, or if your living room has a ton of windows and you are terrified of this giant black mirror reflecting your kitchen lights, there is another model that completely rewrites the rules on raw, brute force brightness. If that one feels like overkill, this next one is where the math actually starts to make sense for a very specific type of room. Because if you are putting an 85-inch screen into a room with sliding glass doors or unshaded windows, buying a budget TV is going to make you miserable. You aren't buying a television at that point. You are buying an 85-inch black mirror that reflects your kitchen island and your ceiling fans. This is where the TCL 85-inch QM7 comes into the conversation, and honestly, where the math gets really interesting for about 70% of you. Right now, during this spring clear-out window, this thing is sitting right around $1,497. Now, TCL's marketing is going to scream about quantum dot and high color volume. Ignore that. Everyone has quantum dots now. It's a cheap film layer. It's practically a commodity. What you're actually paying for with the QM7, the real physical asset, is the brute force light engine sitting behind the glass. This panel pushes around 1,500 nits of peak brightness. Let me contextualize that. If you are watching a movie in a pitch black room and a flashlight shines at the camera on a 1,500 nit TV, your pupils will physically constrict. It is aggressively bright. But in a sunlit living room at 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday trying to watch a basketball game, that brightness is your only defense against glare. It punches through the ambient light, so the turf actually looks green instead of a washed out milky gray. But I need to warn you about the physical reality of this panel. Actually, let me explain this because it catches so many people off guard.
The QM7 uses a VA panel, vertical alignment. It's fantastic for deep blacks when you're sitting dead center on your couch, but the viewing angles are incredibly narrow. If you have a wide U-shaped sectional and your friends are sitting on the far left or right edges during a game, they're going to see a completely different, worse picture than you. The contrast drops off a cliff, the colors desaturate, the blacks turn into a cloudy blue. If your seating arrangement is spread out across a massive basement, the QM7 is going to punish anyone not in the middle seat. And another thing, if you buy this TV, do not use the built-in TV speakers. I know, nobody expects flat-screen speakers to be good, but at 85 inches, the chassis is so massive, and the speakers are firing downward into whatever piece of furniture it's sitting on, it creates this hollow, echoing resonance that makes dialogue sound like it's coming from inside a tin can. You have to budget for a soundbar. It is not optional here. Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the upgrade path. Let's say you have $1,700, maybe $1,800. You are looking at the Hisense U8N. On paper, this is the TV that breaks the industry. It's a mini LED panel pushing over 2,000 nits. It has thousands of local dimming zones. The contrast ratio is so good that in a dark room, it genuinely mimics an OLED. When the screen fades to black between commercials, the TV physically emits zero light. The room goes pitch black. It's a stunning piece of hardware for the price. But I've spent weeks deep in the AV forums, and I've calibrated 3 of these exact panels myself, and there is a massive catch. Hisense ships the U8N with what I can only describe as showroom firmware. Out of the box, the color science is completely unhinged. They push the red and magenta subpixels so hard to make the TV pop under fluorescent store lighting that when you get it home, human skin tones look like sunburned. You'll be watching a post-game interview and the coach looks like he's having a hypertensive crisis. The greens on a football field look like neon toxic sludge. If you buy the U8N, you cannot just plug it in and sit down. You have to be willing to spend 45 minutes digging deep into the advanced picture settings, turning off active contrast, dialing back the color saturation, and fixing the white balance. If you aren't comfortable doing that, or if you're the type of person who just wants to turn the TV on and have it look correct, do not buy the Hisense U8N. And I have to mention the HDMI eARC handshake issues. I didn't think this was a widespread problem until I saw the sheer volume of negative reviews mirroring my exact experience. If you connect a high-end soundbar, especially a Sonos ARC or a Samsung Q series to the Hisense U8N via the eARC port, there is a very real chance you will experience random audio dropouts. You'll be watching a movie and the sound just cuts. The TV and the soundbar lose their digital handshake. You have to grab the remote, switch the audio output back to TV speakers, and then back to the soundbar to reboot the connection. It's infuriating. It's a firmware-level HDMI protocol issue that Hisense has struggled with for 2 generations now. Is it a deal breaker? For me, yes. I have zero tolerance for audio drops. But for some people, the raw visual power of the U8N is worth dealing with a quirky software bug. Just know what you're walking into. Now, what if you want out of the Chinese brand ecosystem entirely? What if you want the heavy hitter processing? You start looking at the Samsung 85-inch QN90D Neo QLED, because right now the QN90D is seeing massive price cuts, dropping from around $3,000 down to the $2,200 range. This is a significant jump in budget, and honestly, for a long time, I told people not to pay the Samsung tax. I thought it was ridiculous. But I was looking at the way cable companies are broadcasting live sports right now, and I had to change my stance. Here is the physical reality of an 85-inch television. It has over 8.2 million pixels, but your local cable provider, ESPN, Fox Sports, they're compressing their broadcasts so aggressively that the signal reaching your house is often a heavily compressed 720p or 1080i feed. That means the broadcast only contains about 1 or 2 million pixels of actual data. When you stretch 2 million pixels across 40 square feet of glass, it looks like a pixelated, blurry mess. The edges of the players look soft. The text on the scoreboard is fuzzy. This is where the Samsung QN90D completely justifies its price tag.
The upscaling processor inside this TV is essentially a supercomputer dedicated to forensic image reconstruction. It doesn't just stretch the image, it uses AI neural networks to analyze the incoming 720p garbage signal, predict what the missing pixels should look like, and actively rebuild the edges of the football, the texture of the grass, and the numbers on the jerseys in real time. When you watch a live broadcast on the QM7 or the U8N, it looks okay. When you watch it on the QN90D, it looks like a native 4K feed. The difference in processor power is staggering. And then there's the anti-glare coating. Samsung uses a proprietary layer on the QN90D that physically scatters incoming light. If you shine a flashlight at the TCL, you see a perfect mirror reflection of the bulb. If you shine it at the Samsung, the light diffuses into a soft, wide rainbow streak. It completely kills the mirror effect. If your living room has windows directly opposite the TV, this specific anti-glare coating is the only way you survive daytime viewing. But, and this is classic Samsung, they refuse to support Dolby Vision. It is so incredibly stubborn. Dolby Vision is the industry standard for high dynamic range HDR movies on Netflix, Max, and Apple TV. It tells the TV exactly how bright or dark every single frame should be. Samsung refuses to pay the licensing fee, so they push their own format, HDR10+. Does it matter? Honestly, at 2000 nits of peak brightness, the Samsung is so powerful that standard HDR looks phenomenal anyway. You aren't losing much sleep over it. But from a purely consumer advocacy standpoint, paying $2,200 for a flagship TV that deliberately omits the industry standard HDR format because of corporate stubbornness is a tough pill to swallow. Before we move on to who should actually buy which model, we need to talk about the physical realities of owning an 85-inch mini LED television long-term, because nobody mentions the thermals. These aren't thin, cool OLED panels. An 85-inch mini LED TV at full brightness is essentially a massive, high-wattage light fixture. They draw hundreds of watts of power. They get hot. If you walk up and put your hand on the back plastic chassis of the TCL QM7 or the Hisense U8N after a 2-hour HDR movie, it will be physically hot to the touch. And because they get so hot, the plastic chassis expands. When you turn the TV off and the room cools down, you are going to hear it pop, creak, snap. It's the plastic contracting as the thermal load drops. The first time you hear it in a dark room, you'll think the screen is cracking. It's normal, but it's a reality of putting that much backlighting behind a sheet of glass. Also, the sheer weight. These TVs weigh between 90 and 115 pounds without the stand. The chassis flexes. If you try to lift an 85-inch TV by pinching the top glass bezel, you will permanently separate the LCD layer from the backlight diffusers, and you will create massive, permanent white bleed spots in the corners of your screen. You have to lift them from the bottom chassis. You cannot use standard drywall toggle bolts to mount these. You must hit 2 wooden studs. If you miss a stud, this TV will rip your drywall down to the floorboards. So we have the $1,500 glare fighter in the TCL, the quirky but insanely powerful Hisense U8N, and the premium processing powerhouse from Samsung. How do you actually choose without making a $1,500 mistake? Let's break down exactly who these are for, who should avoid them, and what my final lab verdict is. Look, I know I just spent the last 20 minutes tearing these panels apart. I know it sounds like every single TV on the market is a flawed, defective compromise. And honestly, they are. That is the physical reality of consumer electronics. Engineers are given a budget and they have to decide what to sacrifice. But this is where we have to stop looking at spec sheets and start looking at your actual house. Because choosing the right 85-inch TV right now isn't about finding the perfect display, it's about finding the display whose flaws you literally won't notice in your specific room.
Think about the physical logistics of getting this wrong. Returning an 85-inch television is not like returning a toaster to Amazon. You don't just print a label and drop it off at UPS. You have to save a cardboard box the size of a garage door. You have to wrangle 100 pounds of fragile glass off a wall mount, pray you don't crack the bezel, repack the styrofoam that you inevitably ripped when you opened it, and then convince a freight company to come pick it up. Or worse, you have to rent a van, ask a friend who already hates you for making them help you move it the first time, and drive it back to Best Buy. It is a nightmare. So we are going to get this right the first time. Let's group these up. If you are the person who is staring at a strict, hardline budget of $1,300, maybe you're upgrading a basement, or this is going in a dedicated game room where you have total control over the lighting, you are buying the Hisense U7. Specifically, that U7 5QG variant that keeps popping up in the clearance windows right now. Why? Because at $1,297, you're getting a 144 Hz mini LED panel. The gaming features work, the contrast is fantastic in a dark room. Yes, the processor is a bit sluggish, and yes, you might have to restart it every couple of weeks when the memory cache fills up, but for the sheer amount of screen real estate and black level performance you're getting per dollar, it's mathematically unbeatable. Just buy a $50 Apple TV 4K, bypass their software entirely, and you'll have a theater setup that would have cost you $4,000 just 3 years ago. Actually, wait, let me pause right there. Drop a comment below. Am I the only one who completely refuses to use built-in smart TV apps anymore? Between the ads they inject into the home screen and the lag, I feel like everyone I know just plugs in an Nvidia Shield or an Apple TV anyway. Let me know if you guys actually care about the built-in OS, because I might just stop factoring it into the scores entirely next year. Now, what if your room is a glass box? You have French doors, you have skylights, you have kitchen pendants reflecting right onto the screen. If you have a bright room, the budget conversation changes. You cannot buy the cheap edge-lit stuff. And honestly, even the Hisense U7 might struggle if the sun hits it directly. This is where the TCL QM7 takes the crown. The QM7 is my best overall recommendation for the massive, normal person living room. At around $1,497, it punches so far above its weight class in raw brightness that it almost feels broken. It will defeat your window glare. It will make Sunday afternoon football look vibrant and punchy even with all the blinds open. But remember the reality anchor here. You have to sit relatively centered. If your couch is a massive U shape that wraps around the walls, the people on the edges are going to get a washed out picture. But if you have a standard setup where the primary viewing angles are straight on, the QM7 is the safest, most reliable 85-inch purchase on the market right now. It is a brute force light cannon, and it handles motion just well enough that sports look fantastic. But what if you are a tweaker? What if you are the guy who calibrates his own audio receiver and actually understands what a multi-point white balance is? If you have patience, the Hisense U8N is the enthusiast's dream. It's sitting around $1,698 right now on heavy discount, and the hardware inside this chassis is flagship level. Over 2,000 nits, black levels that rival OLEDs, but you have to be willing to fight the TV to get it there. You have to dive into the menus, turn off the artificial contrast boosters, fix the neon red skin tones, and pray that your HDMI eARC audio drop bug. I cannot recommend the U8N to my parents. I cannot recommend it to someone who just wants to turn it on and watch Jeopardy. But if you are willing to spend an hour dialing it in, it provides the most spectacular high-contrast image you can get under $2,000, period. And finally, we have the deep pockets, the $2,200 tier, the Samsung QN90D. If you watch 80% cable television, if you watch live ESPN, Fox News, local sports broadcasts, and standard YouTube, you buy the Samsung.
I know it hurts to spend that much and not get Dolby Vision. I know Samsung's Tizen operating system is a cluttered ad-filled mess, but when you are dealing with an 85-inch canvas, garbage in means garbage out. And Samsung's upscaling processor is the only one in this lineup that can take a highly compressed, pixelated 720p cable feed and make it look like it belongs on a premium 4K television.
Add in their proprietary anti-glare coating, and it is the ultimate living room survivor. It will look good no matter what garbage source you feed it, and no matter how many windows are open. But I need to end this with a bit of a reality check, a truth bomb, if you will, because I think the tech YouTube space has completely lost its mind when it comes to TVs. We sit here in pitch black studios, staring at side-by-side monitors, analyzing 5% grayscale slides, and looking for tiny blooming artifacts around white text on a black background. We obsess over the exact nit count, but that is not how human beings watch television. The truth is, your brain is an incredible adaptation machine. When you buy one of these TVs, whether it's the $1,300 Hisense or the $2,200 Samsung, and you put it in your living room, you don't have another TV sitting next to it to compare it to. After 3 days, your brain establishes whatever TV you bought as the baseline for normal. The only time you notice a flaw is when the TV actively fails to do its job, when the glare is so bad you can't see the ball, when the motion is so blurry it gives you a headache, when the blacks are so gray that a horror movie looks like it was shot in a fog bank. The models I just walked you through, the U7, the QM7, the QN90D, they do not fail those real-world tests. They clear the bar. Right now, the industry is trying to panic you into buying 65-inch panels or overspending on marginal upgrades because they know the 85-inch math is heavily in your favor. Don't fall for it. If you have the wall space, this specific clearance window leading up to the tournament is the time to strike.
To make sure you don't accidentally buy the wrong hardware revision or the older 60Hz variants that they secretly mix into the search results, I've put vetted links to the exact verified models we talked about today down in the description. Using those safe links is the best way to support the lab, so we can keep buying these panels ourselves and exposing the spec sheet lies. Don't buy a 65-inch TV right now. The 85-inch era is here, and the price is finally right. I'm Chris Walker. I'll see you in the comments.